Obsess about nothing other than your mission. What is the end game that you're after? I'm fanatical about tracking everything. And if we say we're lifting people up, I want to know exactly how many people we serve. The reality is you wind up in the space if you needed help as a kid and maybe you got it, maybe you didn't. Or you saw people around you struggling and you decided to step up and make a difference. I also believe in the strength of the human spirit, just a little bit of help. People can go on to do absolutely amazing things. A ninth grade English teacher said to me, you know, Reynolds, you can go one way or the other. I'm just not sure which way you're going to go. The fact that I remember that at the age of 58 means that it had a pretty big impact on me.
Jeffrey Reynolds, you are CEO of FCA. I want you to share the one big thing that's made the difference for you and the organization.
Obsess about nothing other than your mission. What is the end game that you're after? And so I practice that day in and day out. There's always stuff that comes up here that can be distracting, that can kind of take us off our game. I focus exclusively on mission and try to keep my team pulling in that same direction.
Family and Children Association is what FCA is. Yeah. Tell us what the organization is, but what your mission is.
Yeah, so founded 140 years ago, and I haven't been here the entire time, despite how I might look. We started really as an orphanage and now include more than 60 programs that run the lifespan that serve more than 35,000 Long Islanders. Those are Long Islanders who are struggling with any number of things, be it substance use disorders, mental health issues, homelessness. We do a lot with runaway and homeless kids, our seniors who are struggling, and really lifting people out of poverty. Our goal really is to lift people up to the next level to make Long Island a healthier and safer place for everybody.
What is the exact mission of FCA?
So our quest, and it's been this way for 140 years, is to make Long Island a healthier, safer, and more prosperous place for everybody. And so to do that, we focus on the folks who might need a little bit of help getting there. That includes seniors who are struggling to stay in their homes. It includes folks with mental health conditions, especially post-COVID. It includes people who are struggling with addiction. It includes folks that just are living in communities that haven't had the same opportunities as the rest of us. Again, with a laser-focused mission of how do we lift people up for the next generation?
How do we sit down and focus in on a mission? You must have shaped it in some way. You've been with the organization for how long?
Well, 11 years now.
So I imagine you've shaped it in some way. How does one shape their mission?
There's a couple ways. I'm fanatical about tracking everything. And so if we say we're lifting people up, I want to know exactly how many people we served, what we did with them to lift them up, and then what those outcomes looked like, not only tomorrow, but 30, 60, 90 days out, a year out. I want to know if we tried to help somebody stop using alcohol or stop using drugs, what does their life look like 90 days from the time they left our care? Are they working a good job? Have they put their families back together? Are they feeling good about kind of who they are and what they're doing and that kind of thing? And so we measure everything fanatically. You know, in each of our board meetings, we have the mission statement at the top of the page. In each of our management meetings, we focus on the programs we're doing, how we can make them better, and are there gaps in the Long Island community that we need to fill through new and innovative programs?
What put you on this path? How did you end up here?
I think, you know, generally when you ask people in health and human services how they got into the field, they say, well, I'm kind of a people person and I fell into it. Just generally not the case. The reality is you wind up in the space if you needed help as a kid and maybe you got it, maybe you didn't. Or you didn't need help, but you saw people around you struggling and you decided to step up and make a difference. For me, it's a little bit of all those three things. I had a very challenging childhood, but got some of the help I needed, both at the time and later in life. Just feel very grateful for the ability to contribute and make a difference. And quite frankly, as I said to you when we started talking, there's a lot of days where this doesn't even feel like work and I can't believe I get paid for making a difference in my own community. So it feels really good. I feel like I get more than I give some days.
Can you share some of your childhood journey and the parallels you've noticed in those that you've helped?
Yeah, look, I grew up in a family that had CPS involvement in it. I struggled as a kid. I had once one time a ninth grade English teacher who said to me, you know, Reynolds, you can go one way or the other. I'm just not sure which way you're going to go. The fact that I remember that at the age of 58 means that it had a pretty big impact on me. And it's like the gauntlet was thrown down. And so, I managed to rise to the occasion, but not everybody has the same resources internally or externally and can do the same thing. I'm really cognizant of that, but I also believe in the strength of the human spirit. And very often, with just a little bit of help, the right words, the right actions, the right support, people can go on to do absolutely amazing things.
Now, the parallel with some of the children, the families that you're helping, what are some stories you can share there?
When folks come to us, I'm very aware of the fact that they might have picked up the phone, 6 or 7 or 10 times before they actually have a discussion with us. They've thought about reaching out for help. Sometimes it gets a little better and they don't need the help as much. And sometimes things get worse. I know that it's very, very hard to ask for help. And in my family, that was certainly the case. It wasn't something that you did. You kept family stuff within the family. So when I see somebody finally pick the phone and call us, who's a teenager who's struggling with depression, or a mom who's struggling under the weight of alcoholism, or a senior who said, I contributed to my family, to my community for my entire life, and now I can't afford to pay my bills. I know what it takes to ask for help, but I also know that giving that person that little bit of help can make all the difference in the world. So folks come to us in all sorts of ways, and very often we are the last resort. They have exhausted all of their other options. That's how hard it is to ask for help. And generally, people's backs are against the wall, and so they come to us, in some cases very proud, in other cases really, really broken. And I like to think that we help them put their lives back together.
Amazing. And, we're talking about mission in this conversation, and having a mission statement, organizations should people have a mission statement?
I think so. We only have a limited amount of time on this earth. And I saw something recently that said, we've got 80 summers, make the best of them. The reality is you should be doing work you love. Like a chill goes down my spine when people talk about the Sunday scaries, because I love Mondays. It's a brand new opportunity to get in there and change some lives. I like Fridays too, don't get me wrong. And I like relaxing and spending time with family and all that kind of stuff. But if you're in a job that you hate, that you detest going to, change your vocation, change your job, change where you're working, change how you're doing things. Once you find that passion, it's no longer like work, and you're able to integrate your personal mission, that is your willingness and ability and desire to help, with what you do for sometimes 8, 10, 12 hours a day.
Fantastic. And so if you were to focus it in on what your personal mission is, what would it be?
I think it's to make a difference and leave a legacy. And you're aware of the fact that I'm a cancer survivor. In fact, 2 cancers in 2 years, 2 separate cancers in 2 years. And that even further honed that to say, what do I want my legacy to be? I always thought about, like, at the end of the day, I want to be able to lay my head on the pillow and know that I impacted the lives of another person. I think post cancer, that brush with mortality, that brush and that reminder that maybe time is limited, has only reinforced that for me. It's also gotten me to focus on high impact activities versus some of the noise that can consume our time and energy. And so, it's always been for me that ability, wish, and desire to be able to help another person. And that's only been reinforced in the past couple of years as I've walked this cancer journey.
So your mission is, if I were to even simplify even to one word, it's give. And, it's funny, there's that phrase, give and you shall receive. It seems, or it sounds like you're not so concerned with and you shall receive.
Yeah, look, I think that all comes out in the end. And the receiving for me, it's not like this thing at the end of the road. It's something that I get day in and day out, that nourishing sense, that affirmation that what I'm doing as a professional and what we're doing as an organization is changing the game for families. So when we do this, we try to change the game for individuals. I know that if we strengthen someone, help them become a better parent or more present for their kids, that has a ripple effect. And I know that if we strengthen those individuals and then subsequently strengthen those families, that ultimately we strengthen entire communities. And as we strengthen communities, we strengthen Long Island as a whole, but it's got to start with the individual. And so, this is this is a game of inches. It's a sprint, not a marathon. It's a marathon, not a sprint, rather. And so, I understand that we have to do this person by person. Changing the community is the end game, but enjoying the ride as we change the lives of individuals and families is part and parcel to doing this for the long term.
Jeffrey, let's get specific on exactly how you're helping families and children. Maybe you can share a time that the organization made a difference with this mission.
I think we do that with the 35,000 people we serve each and every year, but there are stories that stand out and that resonate and that builds you up and gets you going to the next person. Recall a young man a few years ago who came to me who had a pretty significant heroin problem, was using heroin and fentanyl to the tune of about 20 bags of heroin a day, which, quite frankly, costs about $200. He was dealing and selling and having an impact on his community. He and I had numerous phone calls in which he was violent against his family, actually on the phone with me, wound up homeless and sleeping here in Eisenhower Park, engaged in a treatment process with us where we coached him through every step of the way, not saying to him, look, you got to stop using drugs, but helping to build that support, helping to build that self-efficacy, helping him to reduce the risk of what he was doing to himself and his community step by step, day by day. He's recently relocated to the Midwest. He's a very, very successful businessman, recently got married and has a child and has never looked back once. And so each day I like to look at how we help folks rebuild their lives. Again, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a joint effort. It's not something we can do for you, but in partnership, we can give you the support that you need. I think I mentioned to you that we run the only shelter here in Nassau County for runaway homeless and trafficked kids. And we've recently seen a pretty big influx of young women who have been trafficked out in the community. That is sold into slavery, whether that be workforce slavery or sexual slavery. And in the past 2 weeks, we've had a number of young women who have come into us. And quite frankly, they are folks that are ashamed. They're folks who are struggling. They're folks, you can only imagine what being trafficked does to your mind and does to your body and does to your soul. And over time, I've watched those young women in the protective shell of our residence put their lives back together, reclaim their dignity, reclaim their self-esteem, and then go on to do great things. We're really proud of the fact that we help people not only transition out of an emergency situation, but into real life. And so I think about a woman who recently left us, who decided that she wanted to go into cosmetology. And a few of us were like, so the makeup thing is good. It's very hard to live on Long Island and, with a pretty modest salary, is that the only thing that you're going to do? And she was actually able to pivot that conversation into working for a funeral home and doing makeup on people who were deceased, which means that you make about 5 or 6 times what you would make working on live people.
Whoa.
We took her dream, helped shape it a little bit and help give her a life that enables her to live on Long Island in a way that's comfortable. This is a really expensive place to live. And so we enabled her. We didn't take her dream from her and say, look, you should do something else. We said, can we tweak that a little bit to make you more financially successful while giving you the same sense of accomplishment that you might otherwise have? And, we spoke to her recently and she said, I can't tell you the warm feeling I get when families come into the funeral home and see their loved one, not as they were on the decline in a hospital bed for 6 months, but as they really were back in the day.
Whoa. And how exactly do you organize volunteers to help somebody who is trafficked, or what does that process even look like?
So basically folks come to us and say, hey, FCA, I would love to volunteer. We then engage in a dialogue with you and say, cool, what are you really good at? What really interests you? Are there populations or life experiences that you have It'll caught your attention. We go through a training process and then we plug people directly into the programs. The nice thing is we've got more than 60 programs here. So if your experience or your passion are seniors who are struggling in the community, good, we got a program for that. If your passion is young people who maybe have gone off the path and need some support and guidance in terms of getting school back on track or family stuff back on track, then we've got programs for that. We also hire, and it's something that's part and parcel to our mission and my personal belief system. We hire folks with lived experience. And so we hire folks who are in recovery from a substance use disorder. We hire folks that have struggled in the mental health system. We hire folks who have committed acts of violence to run some of our prevention programs, because we know that the people who are closest to the problems also tend to be closest to the solutions. And that life experience makes a huge difference in how you not only serve communities in need, but how you view the world.
Wow. And those people that you're bringing into the program who have needed help along the way, now they have a brand new mission. It's all full circle.
They do. They have a new mission. They have a new source of income. And, you know, having walked the road, you get people that are very, very passionate about what they do and their willingness to help.
Jeffrey Reynolds, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.